Hi, Alex. It's great to meet you.
Likewise.
Congratulations on having not one, but 2 films coming out at the moment.
Thank you.
With Rubberneck, you achieved something very remarkable in that you created and then portrayed a protagonist who does some pretty unsettling things, ultimately some horrific things, and yet the audience has to spend an hour and a half with him and like him. And you managed to pull that off because in certain relationships we see that he has, with his nephew, with his sister, and ultimately, in the end, we do sympathize with him. And I was wondering how you managed in the writing process and then directing and acting to make that happen.
Well, that was the central challenge that me and Garth Donovan, who I wrote the movie with, were facing. Is basically how do we make a person, this guy, who does acts that are very unlikable without giving anything away, and the movie continues after those acts. How do we create and then maintain sympathy for him, and how do we do it in a way that's not familiar, and that's not cheesy, and that's not forced in any way, So we wanted to find moments that would allow us to cloak those things in sort of family situations that allow us to learn more about him whilst advancing these sort of sympathetic elements. So hopefully we're not just having a moment where he's taking a kitty out of a tree, but we're actually doing something that would really deepen his character, understand the relationships that drive his backstory, and ultimately why he was led to do the things that he did. So hopefully the two things complement each other. It's not sort of we're creating empathy to keep you plugged in. Hopefully we're building empathy to help you understand why he does the things he did. And because of that whole cohesion, hopefully you're still engaged.
Absolutely. And in the end, we do kind of, without giving anything away, we do sort of see a part of him that throughout the film we're sort of given a glimpse of this kind of memory that he has, this flashback. I'm wondering, did you have the ending in mind before you started working on the project?
We did, but we did a lot of tweaking to it. We did some reshooting with it to make it all kind of work the way that we wanted to. But we definitely did want to have a backstory that was rooted in this character's deep past, ultimately be the hidden thing that drives his actions, and then ultimately reveal what it might be.
And I think that a lot of people watching the film will see this character, will see Paul and say, I know someone like that. I think we all have kind of encountered a person who's a little bit odd and keeps to themselves. Was the character based on anyone in particular that you knew?
No, it was just sort of a fictional character that we created, and we gave him the characteristics that we felt would work for the story that we wanted to tell. Specifically someone who's introverted, withdrawn, shy, someone who has difficulty sharing his feelings, even with people as close as his sister and his nephew. So those are just traits that we felt would complement the story of a person who is harboring unreciprocated desire. So it was just a creation in that sense.
The title, I think, is one of the most appealing things, and it means someone who is gawking senselessly at something. How did you arrive at that title for the story?
My writer's girlfriend came up with it,
Really?
Anastasia, who was also our story consultant, and she wore a lot of hats for us during the shoot. I don't know how she came up with it, but she just did. And for me personally, it just clicked right when she said it. It applies. I also just like how it's one word. I also like that it's kind of a weird, unfamiliar word, and obviously it pertains to our story in a very direct but subtle way.
Absolutely, because it's typically associated with one looking at a car wreck, which I think is great for this.
Exactly.
Not that there's literally a car wreck, but it's fitting. Prior to writing the film, did you what was the idea, what was the catalyst that you thought, I really want to tell this story about an offbeat person who's working in a lab, which is a very interesting setting. Typically films start in a lab and then things go awry and the rest of the film is set somewhere else. But why did you choose that environment?
Well, me and Garth wanted to tell a story. We wanted to tell a slow-burning, character-driven psychosexual thriller with a dramatic family
It's a great way
components.
to describe it.
And we felt like a laboratory would be a good place to explore that particular type of story because there's so much. On the surface, you have these white lab coats and this white sterile environment, and everything's sort of cold and sterilized and austere. But beneath it, there's a lot of tension. There's a lot of drama. There's a lot of subversion and sabotage and jealousy and deception. And I feel because we wanted to make a subtle, muted story where everything is below the surface, we felt this sort of scientific environment where everything is clean on the surface, but stuff is bubbling underneath would be a nice visual complement to the tone of what we're trying to do.
Interesting. And Rubberneck was in Tribeca. Red Flag debuted at the Los Angeles Film Festival. Your films typically are playing the festival circuit. How has that, being a part of that world, shaped your path as an artist, would you say?
Well, gosh, that's an interesting question. I mean, I feel like if there was no film festival world, I don't know if I would continue to make movies because I feel like most of them are seen there, and certainly they're launch in the sense that we get attention. Hopefully we can pair up with a distributor. All of that happens. That initial surge of momentum happens at a film festival. So I don't really know how. I'd have to have a complete paradigm shift in how I think of movies and approach them if this sort of infrastructure wasn't in place. Another great thing, I don't know if this is off topic, but festivals like South by Southwest, Tribeca, they're wonderful because Sundance, LA, they allow you to meet other filmmakers. Almost all of my filmmaker friends I met at festivals, and they're indispensable. Like, I met her at Sundance 2 weeks before we shot the movie, and I met him at a festival at Sundance before we shot the movie. Like, that's where you meet all these people, and that's because filmmaking is such a collaborative medium, and because you're doing it usually in an independent world on a very low budget, you're going to need help. You're going to need to rely on these people. You're going to need to rely on favors. And the film festival scene is wonderful for that reason. It's really supportive. There's a lot of back scratching going on, and it's just a wonderful way to build ties, which will ultimately enable you to make your movie.
And on that topic, you did meet Lena Dunham at South by Southwest, I assume. So of course, I want to end on a girl's question. Since you met her, how did your creative relationship develop over time and ultimately lead to you being a star of her show?
Well, I'm one of many actors on her show. We met at South by Southwest. I don't know if there's like a real arc to this story. I mean, we didn't know each other at first, and then we got to know each other. I was really impressed. She was there in 2009 with her first film, creative nonfiction. I was there with my third film, and we just got along. We talked like 5 minutes, but she was, who is this 22-year-old wonder kid who's got a film at a major film festival? And she was really just smart and perceptive and witty and self-deprecating, and I just loved her immediately. And we did some DVD swaps, and we got to know each other's work and sensibilities, and then we started hanging out a little bit in New York, and then she wrote a part for me in Tiny Furniture, and it was just really fun to work on. I was only there for a few days. It was really fun to work on, and then she, Girls started happening, and she just asked me to be a part of it, and of course, I want to do anything that Lena does. I have so much faith in her sensibility. Anything she does, I would love to be a part of.
Thank you so much, and congrats again on everything. Appreciate it.
Thank you.